and Earth logo of the Gulf Corporation, one of the seven sisters, of course, and I like to think of this particular unraveling and cultural commentary on what gets to count as nature as the nature of gender for the seven sisters. One of the seven sisters, the Gulf Oil Corporation, is bringing us Jane Goodall alone in this extraordinary space called the wilds of Tanzania. Well, when can woman best represent man is one of the first questions we have here. What we have in this advertisement is the leathery hand of the animal reaching in and initiating touch from the region of nature. The animal initiates touch as the white, virgin human hand reaches in to receive the touch of the animal at precisely the historical moment that white man is expelled from the wilds of Tanzania, from the heart of Africa, at precisely the moment that white man is no longer welcome as the colonizers in Africa. Race, recoded onto the animal, reaches out and touches a woman who is coded as scientist, but coded as Dr. Goodall only after she's first coded as Jane. The animal reaches out, touch is established, and the woman exits from the touch as Dr. Goodall. Then we see Jane Goodall on the top of a mountain, a young virgin white woman coded as self-sufficient, a very strange state in a regime of compulsory heterosexuality, a very strange state to code a young virgin woman as self-sufficient and complete unto herself. We see her on the top of a mountain, waiting for dawn's first light, waiting to see the chimpanzees across the chasm on the other side of the valley. We see her pulling a blanket around herself. We hear voiceover, Jane Goodall's voiceover about her self-sufficiency, about her loneliness, about her seeking this pure touch with nature. And all of a sudden, there's a tiny little intervening sign in the picture that disrupts the entire thing. The tiny little thread that we pull apart is a can of pork and beans. Jane Goodall is eating a can of pork and beans, alone on the mountain. Now, anyone who has even heard of the Civil War will remember how Armour made his fortunes, how the canning industries grew out of the Civil War, how the history of industrial capitalism, how the history of the canning industry, the history of standardization in war, the history of the possibility of sustaining the particular penetration into nature that the breakup of the African continent by the European colonial powers in the 19th century, that's what's coded into that can of pork and beans that sustains Jane Goodall on her mountain late at night while she's waiting for first sight of the animals who will come to her in the morning. But when she returns with camera-wielding husband in tow, who will do the pictures for the National Geographic, and with PhD to found an international research site, Jane returns at the moment that a character named Flo has just had a new baby. Flo has just given birth to Flint. Jane Goodall very quickly also gives birth to a human infant named Grub. We see the drama of the family of Flo and her kids, of Flo and Flint, Jane and Grub, as the drama of the production of science in this space called the wilds of Tanzania. And we see enacted the transition from girl guide to mature woman. And this is the story that's coded onto American televisions as the story of the re-entry of Western man through white woman into nature. Now remember that the National Geographic magazine is given as a wedding present, has been given as a wedding present, perhaps more than any other magazine in American history. This is the magazine that marks the founding of the family in middle-class America. It's the magazine that tells the responsibility of imperialism from the Spanish-American War to the present to an American reading public, where it codes race, sex, and class onto the body of nature. Well, let's head to space.
Unleash the ultimate weapon! Constructicons, transform! Phase 1!
Now, there's several boundaries that are at issue as we enter space, but it's the boundary between organism and machine that's at issue as we move into space. What we've all become as we move into space is cyborgs. Cyborgs for earthly survival is the pin that I've got on. I'm wearing a T-shirt that comes from the Nevada test site action in May 1987. The Nevada test site action T-shirt has a view of the planet Earth, spaceship Earth, which is the view from the space race. It's a view of the world that's only possible in view of the Cold War and the space race. And yet it's been an image that's appropriated for Love Your Mother. It's an image that's appropriated for an anti-nuclear action, an action that affirms the Western Shoshone possession of the land that the federal government has invaded for its nuclear weapons test site. It's an image that tells us about our status as cyborgs and that tells us about the point of view from an extraterrestrial position. As the science of the Jane Goodall story is coded female, the science of the space race is coded male. And this is a place where the body is turned into an information processing device, is turned into a mechanism for generating streams of data. The body is part of the loop with the machine. We're both communications devices. Like the Jane Goodall story, this also is about touch, communication, information, the perfect reunion of the parts of the world in the post-World War II order. But this is a narrative that works between human, or among human, animal, and machine. This is a narrative that makes the boundary between the human being and the machine particularly ambiguous.
He's won!
This is a character named Ham, the first American to space. Ham is an immigrant to the United States. He's an Afro-American, where race is coded back onto the body of the animal. And like the Afro-Americans held in subhuman status in slavery, Ham, the first American in space, is a captive, brought here against his will, captured violently out of Africa, and put into the space race as a particularly interesting kind of character who embodies the breakdown of the boundary between organism and machine. But the chimpanzee Ham got his name Ham only after his success